All right, so let's dig into these topics though, because there was quite a few interesting things that have happened in the last month that I think are important to discuss. I'm going to kick this one out of the gate with saying number one is the RBA surprise rate increase.
Why did you say surprise?
Because the probability in my mind was 0 and then it got raised.
Charlie's view equals surprise. There was like nothing else.
All right, well, I'll share some insight on this one here. I follow the RBA rate tracker, which for anyone who hasn't seen this, if you search RBA rate tracker on Google and come through, someone's put together this fantastic website. And I think it's on the ASX, so it's actually done like properly, where they track all the major economists, the banks, and the intraday lending. And they put together an index that gives a percentage score on what the likelihood is that the next rate rise will happen. And I quite like it because I've often hunted around going, well, what does CBA think? What does Chris Joy think? And then I'm trying to like pick who I'm going to back, where these guys have like a weighted index to give a percentage score. And I would have to say it's been the most accurate overall. It really has.
It just makes it easier because you don't need to look at a whole heap of other news outlets. You just get the answer in like one little hit.
And the percentage changes every day.
Yeah, it's a regular updating. Yeah.
Yeah, so if a piece of news comes out and it's adjusted, like you get to see the adjustment. Now, I will say I'd never seen it at 0% before. Like in general, there might be a 5% chance or a 95% chance, but it's never been like 0% chance. And it was.
Does it make you feel like Philip Lowe is the one that runs that tracker? Just to shock people more? Like, wouldn't that be the greatest Scooby-Doo reveal? It's like, and the villain is... and all he's trying to do is get everyone on the exist.
Wait, I wonder if he's got like some secret like sports betting account where he's betting on the rate rises. He's just like taking that juicy 7-figure salary.
But wouldn't that be amazing?
The odds would have been amazing on last month.
Sports bet, please go. But totally, like because I saw that and I said the logic makes sense as to why they wouldn't have increased it, right? Like the spending through the economy is sort of stagnating. House prices were stagnating / declining, depending on where you were buying, obviously. Like I could see the sentiment in the news. I could see it representing through the financial markets. I'm like, I can see why a 0% makes sense for them to stop and reassess. Because I was in the same camp where I'm like, yeah, 0% makes sense to me. Like a 0% change makes sense to me.
I do, but I think we have to think about this a little bit differently. And this is my view and thinking has changed a little bit on this as well, right? The reason the RBA raises interest rates is not to directly affect anything. It's like it has a knock-on effect to things. So it's all about knock-on effect. So what the RBA really does is they raise rates. That in turn raises the cost of mortgage. That in turn has someone spend less when they go out or maybe not on a holiday or buy a car, right? So can you see like how many knock-on effects have to happen? Or maybe it's like they raise rates and then a business goes, geez, this economy is not looking that great now. It's more expensive. My mortgage is more expensive. I don't really want to borrow money in this business. I'm not going to hire that next staff member.
Totally.
So I'm not going to grow. So there's, two things that have happened, one personally and then one on a business front where that would slow an economy down.
Yep. Or
a person maybe was thinking about buying a car and they go, oh, I'm going to wait a little bit now. Like all these things are like knock-on effects, not direct impacts.
Even discretionary on credit cards, right? When people are buying things they don't necessarily need now.
So when the RBA references or people in general reference the interest rate rises as a blunt instrument, that's why, is because it's not a direct instrument. They're not going, hey, rents have gone up. We're going to directly do something to alter rents, right? So it's all knock-on effect. Now, a big part of that though, and like the major part, is it's all about like psychology and human behavior. So when they raise interest rates, their intention is to make you think about spending money differently, to change your psychology around spending money. And when they drop interest rates, what they're saying to you is spend.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the whole thing. And like if you think back to the start of the pandemic, they dropped rates to 0 and said, we've got you till 2024.
Just spend the money.
They were encouraging people to go spend. We got you, right? Don't worry, we're not going to... what happened, different story. Now, if I was going to await what has just happened here is that this is like, as a whole, what happened when they paused last month is the economy kicked. House prices started going up. inflation had come down a little bit. Unemployment had risen a little bit. It's like the idea that if someone was on a quest to lose 10 kilos, they'd lost the first 2 and then go, do you know what? I can go back to living my previous lifestyle.
I could totally do it. Where in this example, it's because to that point, actually, you know what? I'll riff on that analogy, because even if they brought it, like if that person who's trying to lose 10 kilos lost 2 kilos and they didn't change. So imagine they tried to go back and it's like, yeah, you're going to gain the 2 kilos back. But then they look at it and they say, well, maybe I need to maintain this and just see over time, I might lose the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th. But then for the RBA, they're sitting there going, but I could totally lose that 10 kilos quicker if I cut more food, or I didn't eat junk food, or I went to the gym a little bit more, etc. And so the view of this in their eyes is that, hey, like we still need to lose some fat in order to get down to that ideal body weight in that analogy. Is it not just easier for them to go to the media outlets and just say, go and put as much fear as possible into people? Because the RBA doing one thing is good, but leading up to it, everyone was saying, nah, it's going to hit 0. Like to your point, banks were saying it, all the property sort of influencers were saying, no, it's just not going to change. Like it's going to stay as it is now. And then the RBA still increases it. So the outlets that people were consuming the information is the thing that props up their desire to pay.
Well, they kind of do that. But did you not notice in the last month how positive the news is on property?
Totally. But that was the thing. I was like, oh, everybody's on the other side of it. Like they're like, okay, this is where it is. I can play in this market.
So you can see that there would be an issue with the RBA conveying with media to, like, what do they call it? Propaganda? I think it's the word. Like if they're intentionally releasing negative property stories to suppress the market.
Totally.
Right. I would think that that's unethical. I mean, it would work.
I was going to say, I'm not here to judge ethics or anything like that. I'm just here to go, well, how would you go and influence society? That seems to influence as well.
Completely. But even to that point, and there's some other pressures as well, is that the UK and the US also raised rates. And there's a whole other side to interest rates, which is about currency.
Yeah.
That I think we don't appreciate at times as well. Because there's this interesting mechanism where it's like, let's pretend the US raises rates and Australia doesn't. Our dollar becomes weaker, and then they might buy more iron ore, which is actually inflationary, because that makes our economy kick.
Yeah. They did that in the UK, where the UK stopped raising rates and then the US did, and the UK economy had this massive blip, and they're like, oh, we need to raise rates.
So there's a whole other side to this conversation outside of like our own, like inflation is a part of it, don't get me wrong. So is unemployment. So is there's a whole bunch of other factors that go into this, which is there. But overall, when you look at it, I could understand why they did the rate after it. I just wasn't expecting it.
All right, fellow property investor, if you loved the value from this short video and wanted to know more about how you can win at property investing, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now. Alternatively, click subscribe and you'll never miss another one of these videos.